The jungle air hung heavy, thick with anticipation and the remnants of fear. Minutes felt like hours as we waited for the pilot's nod, the distant thrum of the rotors barely masking the tension crackling among us. My palms sweated inside my gloves, and every muscle in my body seemed to coil tighter with each passing second. The briefing had been direct: secure the wreckage, retrieve what we could, and leave nothing behind for the enemy. But as the reality of our task set in, the familiar weight of responsibility pressed on my shoulders. We moved in silence, each person locked in their thoughts, the camaraderie we usually shared replaced by the singular focus of survival. I scanned my teammates, reading the nerves etched across their faces, searching for a scrap of reassurance. Outside, the green canopy of Vietnam swayed gently, indifferent to our presence in the chaos about to unfold. I ran my hand over the cool metal of my rifle, letting its solidity ground me. A final glance exchanged between us confirmed our readiness. Then, as if on cue, the pilot's voice crackled through the headset. 5 minutes to the drop. I exhaled slowly, mentally rehearsing my movements. Hit the ground, orient toward the crash site, keep low, stay sharp. It was a rhythm drilled into us by countless missions, but each time was different, unpredictable, stained by the possibility of disaster. The helicopter shuddered as it began its descent, blades slicing the humid air. My heart hammered. The doors slid open, exposing us to the wild expanse beyond. The world seemed to pause, a heartbeat of stillness before the action. Then, no more waiting. It was time. When I arrived in Vietnam, my time in the U.S. Air Force was minimal. A year ago, I was in high school, and now I was about to have my first taste of combat. Just 2 months ago, I repaired the ground equipment that serviced the aircraft at Tyndall Air Force Base, and now I was journeying down a road that made my stomach churn. I joined the Air Force because my draft number was about to come up. I figured I had a better chance of surviving in the Air Force. As soon as I arrived in Nam, they assigned me to air rescue and recovery. My job at the ground equipment unit would have to wait. Although I was a greenhorn, I had at least 2 months of combat training in California before coming to Tan Son Nhut Air Base just outside Saigon. As I settled into the helicopter with my team, the aircraft took off, sending a chill up my spine. We had been flying for about an hour when the gunner pulled back the hammer on the M60 machine gun and let off a few rounds. At that point, I knew we were about to reach our destination. I started getting my gear ready, adjusting my backpack, pulling the hammer back, and chambering around. I checked to see if all my equipment was ready. I then sat with my eyes fixed on the cockpit as the pilots maneuvered the helo to the drop-off point where we were to recover the bodies and the sensitive equipment from the downed cargo aircraft. After the recovery, we were to set charges and destroy the plane. A simple get in and get out. Each one of us positioned ourselves at the door, and when the helicopter was about to land, we hit the ground running. The helicopter lifted off immediately and started to climb, but a rocket hit the fuselage and the copter went up in flames. The aircraft was about 75 yards away, and we got halfway there when the entire tree line opened up with AK-47 projectiles whishing past us. I was in the middle of the pack and almost fell when the airman in front of me collapsed. I could feel the bullets as the spent ones inches from my head. Finally, I made it to the C-47 and crawled in. I could hear the shells hitting the body of the plane. I returned fire behind the cover of a crack in the fuselage. Suddenly, there was a silence with the weapons in the tree line ceasing. I looked around and saw only Tiny, my buddy at the tail end of the plane. I yelled out, "Where are the others?" Tiny gestured with his head, and I looked out the other side of the plane only to see 3 bodies on the ground. The silence hung thick and oppressive, like a wet canvas draped over the wreckage. Blood pooled between the scattered equipment, mixing with the red-brown mud of the Vietnamese jungle floor. Tiny's face was a mask of grim determination, his eyes scanning the tree line with a predator's intensity. The metallic tang of blood and gunpowder filled my nostrils, making my stomach churn worse than the helicopter ride. "We're not done," Tiny muttered, his voice low and gravelly. His hand gripped the M16 so tightly, his knuckles had gone white. I could see a fresh cut on his cheek, a thin line of blood trickling down like a crimson tear. The bodies of our fallen teammates lay sprawled in unnatural positions, their olive-green uniforms now dark and wet with blood. A distant bird call broke the silence, but Tiny knew better. That wasn't a bird. His hand shot up, signaling me to stay low. The cracked fuselage of the C-47 provided minimal cover, with metal panels bent and twisted from previous impacts. Spent shell casings littered the floor, their brass surfaces glinting in the filtered jungle light. "They're regrouping," Tiny whispered. His eyes never stopped moving, scanning left, right, checking every possible angle of approach. The jungle seemed to breathe around us, a living, watching entity. Insects buzzed, creating a background soundtrack to our potential death scene. In the distance, something moved. A shadow, a flutter of leaves, a hint of movement that didn't belong to the natural rhythm of the forest. I checked my weapon, hands moving mechanically, months of training overriding the pure terror that threatened to consume me. One wrong move could mean our last. I yelled out and asked Tiny if he had the radio. He replied right away, "Sam had it." I looked out the window of the plane and saw the radio on Sam's pack. My heart sank as I realized I had to call for help. One of us had to retrieve the radio. I didn't think that Tiny would do it, as he was a large man weighing 275 pounds. My heart had a sinking feeling as the thought of exposing myself for the long track of 50 yards with bullets flying was not appealing to me. I rested for a brief moment and thought about my family and friends. I took off my backpack, canteen, ammo belt, and other items that would weigh me down, and waited by the crack in the fuselage to muster enough courage to run and retrieve the radio. Tiny glanced over and saw my dilemma and caught my eye. He nodded, and I somehow knew I had to try. I burst out of the crack and got about 35 yards before the tree came alive. Like when I arrived, the bullets passed inches from my body, and I could see the small leap of dirt explode as the projectiles hit the ground in front of me. But it wasn't as intense as when we arrived. As soon as I left my cover, Tiny had put his M16 on auto and emptied the clip on the tree line. Just as I reached the bodies, a sharp pain hit my leg, and I fell between the airmen with Sam in front, shielding me from the onslaught of ammo. I grabbed Sam and turned him on his side, feeling the lifeness in him as each bullet that hit him was meant for me. I retrieved the radio and waited for the chance to get back to cover. Just as I was about to get up, a barrage of mortar shells exploded around the aircraft. For a brief moment, I stopped breathing. I reached back and pulled the lifeless bodies close to me to shield me from the bombardment. I knew at once that the cover of the plane was not my best option. I thought of the briefing before the mission. I had all the info to call for help. I turned on the radio and keyed the mic. Whiskey Bravo 25 calling command Q100. Again I called Whiskey Bravo 25, using the calling command Q100. A crackling and static voice came over the radio. "Come at Whiskey Bravo 25. For a brief moment, my mind went blank, but I gathered my thoughts and said 2 words under fire. It seemed like eternity, but after a short pause, a voice came back. "This is Rabbit. What's your situation, over?" Rabbit was our commander, Cornell Jones. "We are taking heavy fire. We need an airstrike ASAP. I will mark our location when the jets arrive." Immediately, Rabbit replied, "The F-4s are a minute out. Mark your location now, over." At once, I pulled a canister out of Sam's backpack, pulled the tab, and green smoke covered the area. Then, a crackling voice came over the radio, Frank 4 Charlie Tango, calling Whiskey Bravo 25. I knew at once it was the F-4s, and I answered, "Hit the tree line on the other side of the green smoke beyond the C-47, over." There was a slight pause, and the radio sounded a voice I will remember the rest of my life. "Roger, Whiskey Bravo 25. The mortars were still hitting around the C-47, and I knew inevitably that they would find their mark." The wind had finally lifted the green smoke over the C-47 when a flash erupted in front of me as the C-47 went up in a ball of fire. My heart sank when I realized Tiny was in the aircraft. Suddenly, I removed Sam's M16 from his body and pointed it at a man who was running towards me. A small smile filled my face as Tiny had made it out just in time. The acrid green smoke writhed and twisted, a serpentine veil dancing above the battered C-47's metallic frame. Wisps of chemical-laden mist curled around the aircraft's riveted skin, momentarily obscuring its battle-scarred silhouette. The wind, sharp and relentless, began to peel back the verdant shroud, revealing jagged edges and twisted metal. Then a sudden, violent eruption. Searing white-orange flames burst forth, consuming the aircraft in a thunderous bloom of destruction. The heat struck my face like a physical wave, intense and brutal, singeing the fine hairs along my cheekbones. A concussive roar hammered my eardrums, drowning out everything except the crackling rage of the fire. The metallic scent of burning fuel and scorched aluminum mixed with the sulfuric undertone of explosives, creating a nauseating cocktail that filled my nostrils. My heart plummeted, a leaden weight sinking through my chest. Tiny was inside. The M16 in my hands felt cold and unnaturally heavy, its military green finish smooth against my sweat-slicked palm. To my right, Sam lay motionless, his body a broken silhouette against the burning landscape. Then movement, a figure darting through the smoke, a human shadow emerging from the inferno's embrace. A fleeting, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. The acrid smell of burning vegetation invaded my nostrils, a thick, choking mixture of scorched earth and melting vegetation. Tiny's body pressed against me, his breath ragged and quick, muscles coiled like steel cables. The green smoke curled upward, a serpentine signal dancing against the dense jungle backdrop. Emerald and olive foliage trembled as the F-4C roared overhead, its engine a thunderous scream that shattered the humid stillness. Napalm erupted in a liquid inferno, orange-yellow tendrils licking through the tree branches like hungry serpents. The canopy transformed into a writhing, incandescent tapestry of destruction. Burning figures burst from the tree line, silhouettes wreathed in flames, their agonized screams a primal chorus of unimaginable pain. The heat was suffocating, waves of scorching air pressing against my skin, making sweat instantly evaporate. Tiny's muscles tensed, a living tremor of anticipation and horror. The final F-4 descended, a metallic predator against the smoke-hazed sky. Its rockets erupted in a cacophony of explosive fury. Massive trees, ancient sentinels centuries old, splintered like matchsticks, their violent destruction a symphony of cracking wood and shattering bark. Then suddenly, silence, a profound, crushing quiet that seemed to swallow sound itself. It took us 2 hours to retrieve the fallen airmen and 2 officers. Tiny and I set the charges and finished off the remains of the C-47. The medic's hands were steady, his fingers calloused from years of battlefield repairs. Each bandage wrap was precise, clinical, a testament to countless similar wounds seen and treated. The helicopter's rotors thrummed a steady rhythm, a mechanical heartbeat cutting through the dense jungle air that still carried hints of gunpowder and wet vegetation. Tiny wasn't tiny at all. 6'4" of pure muscle, with skin the color of burnished copper, and eyes that had seen more violence than most men could comprehend. His massive hands, now folded across his chest, bore scars that told stories of battles long before this mission. A thin line of dried blood traced the edge of his jaw, forgotten in the aftermath of our recent encounter. I flexed my wounded leg, feeling the sharp bite of pain beneath the fresh bandages. The medic, a young man whose name I hadn't bothered to learn, avoided direct eye contact. He'd seen enough soldiers to know when conversation was unwelcome. The chopper's interior smelled of antiseptic sweat and the metallic undertone of recent combat.
"We lost 6 good men back there," Tiny muttered, not looking at me. His voice was low, gravelly, a sound that seemed to emerge from somewhere deep in his chest. The statement hung in the air, neither a question nor a complete thought, but a fragment of grief barely contained. I understood. Some missions leave marks deeper than physical wounds.
The jungle outside blurred into a green-brown smear, a watercolor of destruction and survival. Another day, another mission completed, if completed was the right word for the messy reality of our work. The medic finished his work and moved away. leaving us to our silence and our thoughts. This is Sylvester Fourroux, and that is my story of my first combat mission in Vietnam. Please like and subscribe to SCO's Media YouTube channel for more video of this type